Bright indirect light. What does that even mean? I am sitting here in a spot about 1.5 meters away from the brightest window in my house. I mean, is this bright indirect light? It looks bright to me, but when I check the meter, nope, not even close. So where I'm sitting right now is literally right next to the brightest window and doorway in my house. So that's why I've got quite a lot of plants here, you know, small and big, taking as much advantage as I can of this natural lighting spot. But there are still plants here that are doing very well and some that are probably not doing what I want them to. So for example, my Monstera 𝐼𝐿𝐵, it's about 20 centimeters away from the window. It is loving life. It keeps coming out with beautiful variegation. But I also have a Thai constellation Monstera, and the Thai isn't as variegated because it's a little bit further back from the window. It's not getting enough bright light in that spot, even though it's only a few centimeters away. And then I've got a philodendron underneath that Monstera, and the philodendron, and a few plants actually, and the philodendron is doing very well because philodendrons don't mind dappled light and a little bit of medium to bright light. They don't need it as bright as something like my Monstera 𝐼𝐿𝐵 does. So even in this room, even only 1.5 meters away from the window, the plants are getting different amounts of light. It's a beautiful bright day outside. It's about 27 degrees Celsius, so it's perfect day outside. And you can see a lot of light in this window. But that's because our eyes, and the camera admittedly, is adjusting to the light as needed. That's what our eyes do. But plants can't do that, which is why bright indirect light is such a confusing thing, because it's not about what our eyes see, it's about what the plants can see. And that's the confusion I want to try and fix today. I'm going to explain to you with examples in my house. This is not a jungle, this is not a mansion on Instagram or anything like that. This is my real home in a townhouse complex, and I'm going to show you real examples as best as possible to explain bright indirect light. And I promise you, I'm not going to use a meter to show you the examples. If you want to get a light meter, it's a really good way to understand your plant's needs and how to get the best from your plants. But ultimately, if you don't want to buy a meter, you don't have to. So here's actually a really cool fact. Maybe this is an aha moment that you may not know. When the light is coming from the window, it drops roughly half the amount for every meter away from that window. So if I stand here and then stand here, that's about a meter, just over a meter, I've got half the amount of light in this spot than I do in this spot. And then if I step over again another meter, that's even worse. And for me, in this spot, I've also got a balcony just outside this window. So I haven't even got full bright light. This is shaded bright light outside coming inside. So it's even less than I probably think. But it's still, you know, I still put plants here. It's next to a window, but I've got to put the right plants here because this isn't the brightest spot in my house. And for some plants that have high variegation, for me, this spot actually is not going to work for them. Unless I grab some grow lights, like you can see right behind me. There's a grow light just there, and I've got a window just there, right? Because I still don't have enough supplemental light for me to get flowers on that Hoya, and that's a Hoya Matilda Splash. She's grown magnificently lately, and she has a lot of variegation. So I want to bring out the variegation. So even though it's still very close to my window, I'm not getting enough bright light in that window. And also, speaking of shade, window direction matters when you're looking at your plants. So for me in Australia, we're a little bit opposite to the rest of the world when it comes to light, so bear with me, but north windows in the northern hemisphere, south windows in the southern hemisphere, they're facing away from the equator, and therefore it's the weakest light we get. But if we're facing towards the equator, if we're facing towards the sun, so for me it's a north facing window, which is literally that way for me, then it's really bright light. That is the brightest spot from the house. So window direction matters as well because it matters for the amount of light coming in towards your house. And dirty windows, which this admittedly is a little bit, I'm sorry, matter a lot too, because when you've got a window, it blocks out light, and of course the dirt will block out light too. I'm going to give you some tips on how to get the most out of your natural light a little bit later in the video, so keep watching, but let's keep going with bright indirect light and what that really means. Now I'm going to take you outside for a second because that's how I really clicked when it came to bright indirect light. But before we do, just a quick pause, because if you are looking at your plant and it just isn't growing well, or it's not looking quite right, and you're thinking, is this a light problem or is this something else? Then I've got something for you. I've created this free downloadable health check for your plant, 5-point plant health check, which is hard to say, but it makes sense. It's literally checking your plants across a few different areas. It's a maximum 3 to 5 minutes to fill out, and it will help tell you if your plant can bounce back or if it needs help elsewhere. It's free for you to download at any time. The link to the free checklist will be in the description below for you if you want to check that out. Okay, so we're going in transition mode here. We're going outside, so again, apologies for the exposure changing here. But, right, this is me, obviously, in direct sun. It's not called bright direct sun, even though it should be, because it's freaking bright right now. This is bright direct light. And then I'm going to step into the shade This is bright indirect light. So literally the difference is the direct stands for direct sun, indirect and direct sun, and the bright just means how bright it is. Because if I was here but on a cloudy day, it wouldn't be obviously this bright, and it would be a lot more covered and it'd be a lot darker, so we'd be able to see each other a lot easier. So what you're looking for when you're talking about bright indirect light is this spot here in the shade. I don't know how bright this looks on camera, apologies, but this is like being under a tree canopy. I'm just under my balcony. In fact, actually, let's go under a tree canopy. Got a big frangipani tree here. Right, see a little bit of dappled light. So this is what we're looking for when it comes to bright indirect light. We're trying to emulate this spot here in our house. The problem is we've got balconies, we've got doors, we've got windows, we've got other buildings, etc., etc. But the term, let me get through, but the term bright indirect light just means it needs to be bright enough for you to see as much as possible. The closer to the window, the brighter it is. The further away from the window, the less bright or the darker it is. And then the indirect stands for not direct sun, but indirect sun. Does that make sense? So bright indirect light is almost similar to bright direct light. You're just sitting or standing in shade. Right, so I'm right next to my window. I've got a balcony out there. This is bright indirect light. And it's probably the brightest spot I'm going to get in this room because there's no direct sun, there's no direct beam coming into the window, but it is a bright or the brightest spot in this part because it's still got light coming through the window. So this technically for this room is bright indirect light. But if I stand here, this is actually probably getting more medium light. This is about 1.5 meters away from my window. I don't have ceiling lights. This is the ground floor. There's a first floor above, so I don't have any light coming through the ceiling or the window. I don't have big high ceilings, so the light is only coming from just above the camera. You can't really see well there. So this is medium light, even though the window is literally about 1.5 meters away. And then if I go all the way back here, this is not bright direct light. This is not bright medium light. This is actually a low light spot. This is grow light territory, as you can see there. So this is actually a low light spot, and actually probably here for me is a medium light spot. And then here, right next to the window, this is the brightest spot in the room. Hands up if you have ever had a plant that's been 1 meter or so away from a window and it hasn't done very well. Hands up. Actually drop a hand emoji in the comments below for me if you've had that situation and you haven't quite understood it. Hopefully now, after today's video, you might understand it a bit better. Okay, so now that we've talked about bright indirect light and all the differences in your house, you might be thinking that you probably don't have enough light now for some of your plants. So here are a couple of tips to make the most of the natural light you have in your home near your windows. Here are 6 things that will actually make the difference. The first one is move your plant closer to the window. Don't move it right against the glass if you can, because glass does hold heat and cold naturally. So if you've got a really hot summer or a really cold winter, it could burn the leaves. But even 20 centimeters away from your window is better than 50 centimeters away from your window when it comes to the amount of light that plant is getting. It makes a huge difference. Now, not every plant you have needs that front row seat. It doesn't need to be right next to the glass. So do prioritize plants that are highly variegated, or you want to encourage more variegation, or perhaps plants that just need more light, obviously, in general. Also, just to note, if your window has a bright beam coming through, a direct sunbeam coming through, that is not bright indirect light, that is bright direct light. So do not put plants into the direct sunbeam, except succulents and cacti. They love a bit of sun, so don't be afraid to put them in the natural sunbeam, or even some herbs and, like rosemary or thyme or anything like that. That would be lovely in some sun. They need about 6-7 hours a day minimum of direct sun coming through that window. Number 2, you might want to accept that plants now have a front and a back. They're not outside surrounded by light. They are facing a window. So they are going to grow one way towards the light. So you can either rotate quite often, weekly. I know one of our viewers actually mentioned that he puts his plants on a lazy Susan, like that rotates, and he just rotates them easily. So that was a great idea if you want to rotate them quite often, but I don't. I just accept they have a front and a back and they face towards the light. Number 3, you can try and set up some DIY reflectors at home. Put a nice mirror, perhaps somewhere that's reflecting light from coming into the window back into the room. Maybe a white foam board or white walls. They all help in reflecting natural light coming into the room to make it a little bit brighter. Or if you want to go full DIY, put some foil behind some plants and bounce extra light off that way. May not look the best, but it will definitely help with lighting, and it's more about the plant in my mind than it is about the wall behind it, but it's up to you, obviously. 4th thing you can do, I mentioned this before, clean your windows. I'm probably going to clean this window straight after this video. I'm calling myself out here, but it actually does help a big difference to let the light coming through the window, and it'll help make your bright indirect light just that little bit brighter. Number 5 you can do, try to match the plants to the actual light in your house, not the Instagram dreams that you want, not the picturesque, perfect, whatever it is. You need to try and understand the plant and match that plant to the light it needs. So as I said, if you've got a sharp sunbeam coming through, succulents and cacti. If you've got a bright window, go variegated plants or plants that need brighter light. Most that can go near a window up to a meter close, monsteras, alocasias, philodendrons love it. Philodendrons are easily growing about a meter away from my windows. In a normal room without much light, go for those low light plants. Now, I technically don't believe there are low light plants because all plants need light to grow. But things, as you have probably heard, ZZ plant, golden pothos does well. I think a spider plant actually does well in low light. I have a few videos around low light plants or plants that actually survive in the lower light in your house if you need them. So go check that out, but match the plant needs to the lighting needs in that spot in your house. And then the 6th thing you can do is probably the obvious one, and that's just buy a grow light or buy 5 grow lights or buy, how many do I have? 8 to 10 grow lights at least. That does really change everything. And remember, the closer that light is to your plant makes a big difference as well. So you don't want your grow light here and your plant here. You know, start about 30, 40 centimeters away with your grow light. And if it's too much or too little, adjust from there. But grow lights make a huge difference and they will help make your plants grow faster, or even in fact, just start growing if they're not already. A light meter, if you want to purchase one, will confirm all of this. If you want, I'll leave a link to a couple of ones that I have in the description below for you. So yeah, I used to be so confused by all these light terms, just like everyone else. And then I started to compare it outside and it made a lot more difference in my mind anyway. So the direct sun versus the balcony shade, and it really did click for me. Direct sun is obviously bright, and then bright indirect light is just as bright, just filtered or just under a tree canopy. That's what you're aiming for inside. Anything below that is medium light. Remember, your eyes do adjust accordingly. That's it for today. Thank you for being here. I hope this helped you understand bright indirect light better. And don't forget that free 5-point checklist in the description below. Have an amazing week full of leaves, love and laughter, and a little bit of a suntan perhaps. And I'll see you in this next video here all around grow lights. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye. But of course, plants don't have eyes. Plants don't do that. Well, they do have eyes if you have those cute little eye magnets and you put them on your plants because you talk to them. But that's a completely another story for another day.